Hi, my name is Tara Kachaturoff, and I'm the host of Michigan Entrepreneur, where we feature businesses from startup to stellar. Today I have as my special guest Roy Sexton, who is the Director of Marketing at Clark Hill, as well as the President-elect of the Legal Marketing Association. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you today about all things that have to do with law and marketing. It's like the intersection of awesomeness.
Wow. That's a great intro. Can we just stop there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, we had to go on because we have so many interesting
We've got more time
things.
to fill.
We do. So, Roy, why don't you tell me, before we jump into things, how did you get into the whole law marketing end of things?
Serendipity. I'm still waiting to figure out what I want to do with my life. No, it is serendipitous. Do you want me to go back to my birth? No, but I went to a small liberal arts college, Wabash College, and it was one of those schools where anything you want to do, you do. You can be in a fraternity, you can be in the plays, you can, so I kind of did all the things and never picked a career. It would have been important. And then I hit the snooze button and got a master's in theater because I didn't want to go into the real world. Yeah. But then after that, I realized, okay, I probably should, earn a living so I can eat. And then I ended up at Deloitte Consulting. By some miracle, I talked my way into a job to being a business analyst there, and I was in a healthcare practice, and because I understood it. It was the only part of Deloitte that I kind of understood, and they moved me up here to Detroit. I did that for a while. I ended up at Oakwood Healthcare doing strategic planning, and it was always just, let me have a job until I figure out what I want to do. But through the process of being open and willing to try things, which is what I learned in my undergrad and the value set that my parents always instilled in me, I was open to opportunity. At some point, my husband, who was on a more normal track, he's an engineer, he's about an automotive, he did internships, he did all the things people are supposed to do so they knew what to do with their lives. He said, go get your MBA so people know what you're doing. And it was at that point, when I was at Oakwood, they said, we like what you're doing in strategic planning. And in healthcare, strategic planning is a very specific set of tasks. It's facility planning, it's marketing and strategic planning are part of the same division. My boss at the time, Mary Zatina, she said, I'd like you to bring to marketing what you're doing in strategic planning. I said, Mary, I just finished my MBA, had one marketing class. She goes, I don't care. I like how you manage people and lead people. The marketing people know what they're doing, but they need someone to look at the why they're doing it. And so that's always motivated me, and I did that for another 5 years. And to your original question, I don't know how to answer anything concisely. It's going to be a three-parter. I had reached a point with healthcare that I was like, I feel like I've done everything. It's a slow-moving beast to try to change. So I go into law, which is not exactly quick-moving in terms of decision-making around marketing. But I threw my resume out there, and Dave Trott here in Oakland County, he hired me. Now, I'm not to get political, I'm this gay liberal from Ann Arbor who went to work for the Republican foreclosure king of Southeast Michigan, but we loved it, and I loved Dave, and he ran for Congress at the time. I got to experience that, but that got me into law. But it was accidental. I didn't say, gosh, I've done healthcare, and now I want to be a legal marketer. I wanted a new change and an opportunity, and threw my resume out there, and he hired me, and I got into the Legal Marketing Association about 10 years ago, and I sort of found my family. I found people that thought like I did, that really loved solving problems. And I also found at that late state of my life, I like working with attorneys. I like helping them find their voices. And so Trott led to Kerr Russell, which then led to Clark Hill. So Clark Hill's my third firm.
Oh, your third firm. Okay. Wow. So
my answers will get shorter. I don't know how to wrap that one up when people ask me.
Well, we got to do it because it's 30 minutes.
I know, we're out of time now, right?
We're out of time. Time to wrap it up. So before we jump into what legal marketing is and what you do, can you give us like a quick definition of how you look at legal marketing?
Well, I look at it as, because of my theater background, and My Fair Lady, I think, is a problematic musical for many reasons now, but I sometimes feel like the Rex Harrison character, that, the way law firms work in the business model, and you know this, and your viewers likely do as well, it's not like I'm selling tennis shoes. It's not like I'm even healthcare marketing. I don't really get the credit for the revenue that comes in, and I don't want it. It's really the attorneys who get the origination credit, and much like consulting or accounting or some of those other professional services organizations. So the attorneys need a megaphone. They need someone to create that comfort level for them, the awareness and the presence, so they can walk into a room and have a conversation and pitch themselves. So for me, I believe my job is helping the attorneys find their unique voices, and I sort of see it in kind of a set of nesting dolls. There's Marketing Clark Hill. You know, we're a huge firm. We're AmLaw 105. 27 offices, 650 attorneys all across the United States, Mexico, and Ireland. So I can do that. I can let people know who Clark Hill is. What do we do? Why are we special? I can then look at the practices in the industry groups and say, well, what makes them unique? That's kind of our product line, right? And then within that, the real product we're selling are the attorneys who deliver the services. So if I do my job right, people know who Clark Hill is. They know the practices that we have so beautifully, and then they know the practitioners. And so it's fun to kind of work on those different levels and have that moment where you're like, this attorney has the confidence to sell themselves, and one day they might not need me. I hope they do. I hope you do. I need pay my mortgage. But you know, I think it's fun for me to do that kind of work, and it's done through a combination of digital, advertising, thought leadership, media relations, things like that. But that's to me the mix that really works.
And you know, I think, you know, when it comes to law, people only are really looking at it when there's an issue, when there's a problem. I mean, it's not something we do every day.
No.
It's usually you're accessing it when you're in a high stress situation.
And when you're a corporate law firm like we are, and that's what people kind of lay people, and why would they? They sort of think we're all one and the same. They're plaintiff firms, and they're the ones you might see advertising on television, mesothelioma folks, right? And they're needed. We don't do that. We're actually working with general counsel, inside organizations, C-suite executives who are working through, you know, maybe they're doing a merger and acquisition, maybe we're really strong in labor and employment, maybe they have some issues that they want to work through from policies and procedures in their organization from the people perspective. Maybe it's an energy issue, they're working through some legislation, whatever. That's where we can step in. I do think the thing that I pull from sometimes from my healthcare background, you know, marketing the emergency room is different than marketing a primary care physician, but you want both of them top of mind when you need them. There's something in that that's not dissimilar with law. You know, it's not that people are actively looking for a lawyer like they might, like I want a new pair of shoes, but when they, as you said, when they need them, they need them. And so you want that steady drumbeat of content and awareness so people think of you first when they have that need or when they're ready to make a change or they're not happy with their current representations.
And it really, you know, gets down to, I mean, it's name recognition. They do need to know the name, and they need to have a certain prestige about it, because that's really what sells a lot. But it's also the personality of the individual that they end up working with, because you don't want to be working with somebody who you can't deal with.
That's exactly right. And I think that the definition of what prestige is has shifted, right? And we were joking in the green room. I love my lawyer friends, but I don't know if they didn't have enough birthday parties when they were kids, or like me, they didn't have cool clothes. So there's this kind of, they think prestige is having a beautiful office, belonging to the right country club, sponsoring the right thing. What we're hearing from clients, especially coming out of the pandemic and with the emphasis around diversity, equity, inclusion, and ESG, or the governance push that we're seeing really heavy in Europe and moving over here, and accountability and responsibility, prestige means something else to our clients now. They want to know you're committed to your people, you have a good culture, you are giving back in an authentic way to your community. You're not just writing a check to the rodeo down the street. You actually are being thoughtful in your hiring practices. Your leadership model represents authentically the community you serve. That's what prestige means now to clients.
Yeah, what do you stand for?
Right, and you know, I use the analogy sometimes, if I go into a restaurant, I assume I'm not getting food poisoning. I'm there for the ambiance and the quality of the food. So I assume as a lawyer, you're good, fine, you're best lawyers, super lawyers, good to know. What are you like as a person? Are you going to, you know, I want you to be tough when I need you to be tough, but when I'm sitting down with you, I want you to be accessible. I want to feel that I can connect with you. And attorneys will say relationships drive our business. They do, but then they skip a step and they're like, so I'm taking you to a football game. It's not a relationship. A relationship is...
God, and I don't really like football.
No, don't take me to a football game. You know, take me to a musical, or you know, or leave me alone. Buy me a book. But you know, let me be home with my family. But I think that's the important thing. Know me as an individual.
Right.
What do I want, and how do I want to commune with you?
So what do you see nowadays? You know, marketing like even to bring up the word marketing like 30 years ago in the law firm, like, oh my God, that was so
and
dirty word.
there's still those people roaming the halls that are like, oh, I don't need you. But then they say,
what's trending now? Where are we going to see law firms now? Are we going to see them on Facebook?
We are.
On Facebook?
Yeah. So let me back up one step and then I'll answer that question. I think you still have those folks in the industry because marketing, and that's why the Legal Marketing Association is so important. We've only been around 35 years.
And that's run out of Chicago, correct?
Our HQ is in Chicago, but we're global,
Year-round,
3,500 members globally. And it started in New York in the 80s when a group of people like me got together to commiserate about how they were tortured by their attorneys and the attorneys didn't want them around because they were the early days of marketers and they were the trailblazers. So you still have those people that are like, I don't need you, but this gets to your point. Where are things going? The kind of old guard, and I'm not being ageist, but folks who've been in this business a long time and successful attorneys who have a book of business, they'll see me come in and go, I don't need you. I'm good. And I'm like, okay, I just wanted to have a conversation and get to know you. I'm here when you need me. The trick I do is when I go into their office, I kind of see, attorneys like me like their trophies, so they have all kinds of tchotchkes and ephemera around, and I'm always like, oh, you're in theater. I get to know them as a person, so I'm safe. But then they come to me and they're like, my kid says I need to be on LinkedIn, or do I need to do a TikTok?
I hope they're on LinkedIn.
Nah, I think the pandemic supercharged that because there were a lot of people that still weren't.
On LinkedIn?
Still, yes,
as an attorney?
Yes.
Oh my goodness
because
gracious.
Attorneys mitigate risk, and they read these stories about if I'm on social media, I'll get in trouble. So they overthink what they put out there, and they'll overthink what they're like. I only accept invitations from people I know and I've worked with. I'm like, well, how are you ever going to get to know anybody else? So, but my job is to help them have those kind of common sense thoughts that to you it was evident. It's not evident to attorneys. So, unfortunately, some of the things sometimes I'm doing, I'm like, I feel like it's 10 years ago because I'm saying, please put your picture up on LinkedIn. And I have one attorney that's like, I don't want my picture on the internet. I'm like, you're a leader in the firm.
You're already on the internet.
I know, but again, people kind of live in a certain space and they think they're controlling the dialogue by not entering into it, but really they're leaving things behind.
I hope they understand about copy paste and putting your.
Well, sometimes it's the mundane to the ridiculous, but to your point about where are things going, it's really where they've been, but it's getting people to embrace them. You know, don't worry about your holiday cards and your holiday gifts and your football tickets and the things that you used to do. The pandemic changed the game for so many of us. I personally don't want to go anywhere other than what I'm much more selective personally about what things I do versus, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, somebody wanted me to stop by something after work, I just would. Now I'm home most of the time, working from home. We have a hybrid situation, which I really love. And I'm like, it's much more effort. I have to be more thoughtful about, do I want to be around people? Will I catch something? And also, I just like being home more than I used to. So that's taken away from us. So we have to use the digital platforms available to us. We have to use account-based marketing where I can, if I want to reach you, creepy as it is, thank you George Orwell and Andy Warhol, I can find you and what you look at and follow you around. Not in an invasive way, what's pretty invasive, but in a passive way. So we do account-based marketing through American Lawyer Media, and we put our softer assets, our video, our kind of webinars and things out there targeted to the person that might want them. We do that on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn reached 4.8 million last year. We're on target. We're at I think 12 million this year will be reached on our LinkedIn and social media. You asked, are we on Facebook? Yes. People would say, well, how many law firms are on Facebook? And people joke, lawyers like to be first to be second. They're always like, well, my colleagues aren't on Facebook. And I'm like, good, that's where we need to be. There are people who are making purchasing decisions. There are executives who have Facebook accounts. And so we put a lot of our softer news on Facebook. We do our cultural events and our community engagement. That really gets traction on Facebook versus our thought leadership, our webinars, things like that get read on LinkedIn. And we use Twitter somewhere in between just to kind of make sure it's kind of filling in. We started Instagram in conjunction with our
They're
retreat.
doing Instagram?
We're doing Instagram. And the interesting game, it's such a visual medium. And I'm aging out of knowing how to be authentic. So I have this wonderful colleague, Alex France, who is she's got the best Instagram. She's an old soul, loves old movies. She's 30, but she's just got the best Instagram herself. And I said, I love what you do with your own Instagram. Can you do the firms? And she was just, as a young person and it's feeling that she could lead something, that's where things are going to. It's not just the technical aspect, but it's how are you engaging the entirety of your team And stop managing your marketing team lawyers as summer associates. Let them run. Let them do what they do and give them the free space to explore. So we're on Instagram. It's a more visually oriented medium. So part of our launch was we were having a retreat. It's in Vegas. People had not been together in a very long time. So Alex launched it that week. She created a hashtag, and we had all these wonderful images naturally being taken by people who hadn't been together in a long time. You might ask, well, do your clients care that you had a retreat? Doesn't that feel very self-indulgent? They do care, because the messages of the retreat were our values, DEI, being engaged with your world, being helpful, and we let those messages come out authentically both on our Instagram and from the attorneys themselves, who now see the power in getting that content out there.
Well,
So,
you have to get in front of the next generation, and if they're using these tools, you've got to be there, because that's
Yeah.
where they're going to be searching for an
Yeah.
attorney. They're not going to be out playing golf, because
that's right.
not
And we have such a
happening anymore.
collapse of
So,
generations
yeah,
in the workplace that
it's gonna have to
I
be a
think some
different
people are
way.
like, oh, well, those people aren't the decision makers. Actually, they are. You know, your average
You don't know who
audience,
they are.
right?
Yeah.
And
people make a lot of assumptions
I know,
about
and
who
for a
makes
lot of people,
decisions.
they think a 30, 35-year-old isn't in a role to make hiring decisions. I'm like, they are. And
Nowadays they are.
now they are. And you know, I remember when I worked in healthcare, I was turning 40, and I said, well, what's next for me? And the CEO, who was never going to retire, said, oh, you've got plenty of time ahead. And I looked at him and I said, you were CEO by my age, but because we've had this collapse, you still think I'm a kid that just wants, so you got to give those authentic leadership opportunities to people, because they are going to be in decision-making roles, so that they can see themselves in your team. You know, I just think there's such opportunity in shifting your culture.
So when you're working with individual practitioners, let's just say in the law firm, how are you doing, what is the strategy you're using with them so that you can help them elevate their presence out there and connect with the right kind of people? Because you do have, you know, we have a diversity of, people doing
Absolutely.
that. Do they come to you individually? I know it's a huge firm, but some might want more help in
Yeah.
ways than others. Do you have internal programs
in
or
our legal
training for
marketing
them?
community, we have a phrase, work with the willing. So,
Work with
you
the
know,
willing.
and so don't push yourself unless the CEO says really work with this person. You're going to have people ebb and flow, and they
Do you
come
have
to you with
a
coaching.
situation where, hey, we have this opportunity
Right.
here, we can get your LinkedIn package together, we can get this set up? Do you have that where they can come to you and
I mean,
get that
it comes,
handled?
you know, there are a lot of different paths to come to marketing and business development. It may help for me to talk just briefly about how we're structured as a team. We have two halves to the team. So I head up the marketing side, and my friend Megan McKeon and colleague heads up business development. And our boss, Susan Hearn, oversees all of it. So it's very important to have an integrated structure. And we often say, marketing helps you find the door, or your clients find the door. Business development helps you walk through it. So when anybody joins the firm at Clark Hill, they first have a meeting with one of our business development managers. Again, that's that side of the team.
Right.
And they work through a planning process. And that planning process is you as an individual. Yes, you're part of a practice, or we call them business units at Clark Hill. They have an overall strategy. The firm has an overall strategy. We know what those things are. But then the individual comes to us with experience, background, a voice, things they're comfortable doing, things they're not comfortable doing, and they need their own recipe book. Some people love writing articles, some people love going to mixers, some people like doing webinars. So figuring out where there's a comfort zone with the attorney and starting there and building out a plan, and then that gets handed off to marketing. And then we work with the attorney and continue to execute on those things. And after a point, it just becomes a natural, organic process. As the attorney's business is coming in, they might not need us as much, but we always caution the attorney, just because you're busy now, you got to keep building that
Right.
pipeline. And for many attorneys, and it's my prejudice, I suppose, I feel like what we're selling is what's in their heads. So where I feel like we're in our strongest positioning is doing a mix of media relations, thought leadership, content marketing, versus kind of social events and things of that nature. So once they get in that rhythm, yes, the attorneys are just now coming to me, particularly on certain points that I've worked with, saying, hey, I've got an idea for an article. Can you work with, Joel Epstein from Tanner Friedman? He got me here with you. I mean, he works with us, helping our attorneys kind of find those places where he can pitch them as a source. It's easy for the attorney because then they're not writing an article, they're sitting down with a journalist, getting media that way. Then we give it additional signal lift on our social media, we boost it to their target clients. And it's interesting, once they get the rhythm, they come to us.
How much are you spending? Because this, I mean, obviously this was huge. I mean, law journals and all that sort of thing, or magazines and such, that were very specialized by type of law and whatever. How are you, from the writing side of things, from articles and that subject matter expert thing, and we're not talking podcasts right now, but just the written
but we
word,
do those
how
too.
much of that is still emphasized today? Is that still a big part of it, even though it's one prong in the marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge part,
Still
and will
huge.
always be a big piece. I just think I kind of step back and say, there's a message to be told right now. There's a legislative change, and we need to tell them why. And a lot of attorneys think they're a news source and they want to be the first out the gate. That's a losing battle. There's going to be, especially during the height of the pandemic, every law firm was sending out like 18 alerts a day. It's an arms race, and the clients are like, stop sending me all this stuff.
Right.
But if you pause and take a little longer, don't worry about being the first out the gate. Take a little time and tell the client why they should care.
Right.
That's the one I'm going to read.
Angle.
Right. And so that we have two tracks that we describe in Clark Hill. We have kind of I call it self-publishing, which I should find a different word for it, and then there's media relations. And they both have different advantages. So if I'm an attorney and I want something written exactly the way I want it, and I want it released quickly, come to us, we'll put on an alert, we'll figure out if or it can be a podcast episode, it can be, it can be any number of ways of delivering the message that you want it completely controlled by us, distributed by us. And we reach on scale huge numbers. We'll reach 10, 15,000 people with each LinkedIn post. And they're targeted. I go in and I
Right.
figure out who's the
Yeah.
industry. And then we also use a product called JD Super that syndicates that additionally to their own network.
Right.
That includes media, general counsel, people that have
Yeah.
decided I need to know about banking and finance, so they get
Right.
digest. So that works really well for us. But you might want that third-party validation of having your name in Politico or Washington
Right.
Post or New York
Yeah.
Times, and we've gotten there. We now have people coming to us saying, your attorneys respond, they give me good info.
Right.
And that's a different value. The attorney doesn't have to write something fully, they just get to be interviewed.
Right.
They get that extra lift. We take the content in either case, completely authored and distributed by us, or a media hit. We put it back on our socials, get additional reach from that. The clients see, wow, you're in the Washington Post, that's really, but you got to
Yeah.
keep that mix going. The downside to media relations is only that the attorney desire to control everything, you don't get to control. You don't know how the article's going to come out. It takes longer. They might write it in a different way than you want them to. So you have to consult with the attorney and say, what do you want right now? And then put them on either of those paths. And additionally, we do webinars. We have 6 different podcasts that we run that are kind of aligned by different
6
practice
different
areas. Yeah. We have labor, employment, immigration, cannabis, insurtech, and banking and finance. So 5.
You have a cannabis podcast?
We do. We picked up a
Wow.
group in Denver. It's a huge industry and a huge business. And if
Yeah,
you
I
think
know
about,
it's a huge industry. I just
Yeah.
didn't.
I know.
I mean, a legal podcast.
Correct. Well,
cannabis.
because when
Okay.
you think about, especially,
Yeah.
you speak with entrepreneurs all the time. That is a hotbed of entrepreneurs, no pun intended. And they're out there, and they run the gamut. You got the one guy that's growing pot in his backyard and wants to sell it, and then I drive by. There's something I drove by on my way here called Dreams, and I'm like, that's got to be a cannabis dispensary. And I got a little closer. I'm like, you can tell, but they're popping up everywhere, right? So all these small businesses need attorneys to help them consult. And now we're seeing that market consolidation because, like any hot
Yeah.
industry, you have all these entrepreneurs, and then someone will come along and go, I want to consolidate the distribution. And you also need someone, because it's so fraught legally, morally, legislatively, you've got someone who needs to navigate that at the national level. So Bob
Yeah.
Hoban came on board. He's a leading light, and he's building out our cannabis industry team. And one of the tools he used to grow his business up to this point was he had his own podcast, and it's Bob talking like this, talking with people in the industry, people listening and hearing. Gosh, that's great insight. And so then we picked that up, and we've broadened it, and Sanders Egzebski and some other folks from that team now help host that. But yeah.
Wow.
Cannabis podcast.
All right. Well, we just have a couple minutes left, just 1 or 2 more questions. What's the biggest mistake, if you could just pick one, that law firms are making today in general? What's the big mistake?
Not
Or
meeting their
wonder.
clients where their clients are and trying to impose their will on the clients. Attorneys will come to you with this great idea to have some event or do something, and in your bones the clients don't want to do that. But the attorney pays the bills and is insisting that it works. And then when no one shows up for it, they're like, marketing, you didn't do your job. Let your marketing teams do their job. Get out of their way. Tell them the idea you have, and let them flesh it out and figure out what it is. I got a media request yesterday from somebody it's going to be a great idea. I know no media is going to have any interest in this thing. So I am now in this awkward position of taking multiple extra steps to figure out what I can do with the idea. Because of course the attorney coming to me is a very important attorney that makes a lot of money for the firm, and we need to do what he wants. Do we? And that's why I would say also to executive teams at law firms, function like a business. Let your finance people do their finance. Let marketing do marketing, and stop allowing the attorneys to run the show on things that they don't have any business to. Let the attorneys be attorneys, and let us do our jobs. That's the mistake I see law firms make over and over, and that's what we in Legal Marketing Association. I usually try to say it nicer than I just did, but
right. But you just don't let it happen.
Sometimes I can't. It's just like
Right.
just rip the Band-Aid off. But we need to advocate for marketers. This is a profession. This is an industry. These are people who know what they're doing. They're not line staff that need to prepare your steak the way you want it prepared. I'm a vegetarian, by the way, so I don't eat steak. But.
All right. Well, we've come to the end of our time, and I just want to ask you one last question: is what's your advice to, I guess, either law firms or to attorneys? We just got about 30 seconds. What's your one piece of advice you give them?
Pause and listen. We always tell our attorneys in their orientation, the kindergarten thing, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen more than you speak.
All right.
Which I didn't do a very good job of today, but that's what I would say.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roy Sexton, for being a guest on our program today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. If you'd like more information about our program, please visit us at www.michiganentrepreneurtv.com. Please join me again in the future when I interview another enterprising entrepreneur. Until then, wishing you the best of business.